Okay, can all see that. So make sure and put questions in the chat if you want to know anything. So most of this, I'll make it a little bit smaller. Most of this is kind of like, it's common. Well, it's not so much common sense, but it's just a revision of probably what you already know. Aha. So Nelson, can you tell me where you're from?
I'm from El Salvador in Central America.
Okay, yes, I remember now. Yes, I do remember. I saw you just before Christmas. So I've been working with international students for over 12 years, and I've worked abroad, and I've worked at a language centre. So I've worked with a lot with international students. So I get to know the kind of the times, and I think sometimes when you learn English at school, sometimes the English that is taught at school is kind of what can be described as slightly old-fashioned English. So big Victorian style, and a lot of people think if you find bizarre and odd words that, you know, some people are tempted to use words they haven't used for decades. Yeah, so sometimes there's the tendency to overuse words and overuse vocabulary and to make it too kind of flowery. When in actual fact, English just has to be very precise, very accurate, short sentences. You don't have powerful words. You don't have to go over the top. So good writing demonstrates your ability to think critically. When I say critically, I mean accepting the approaches used by other people and not necessarily agreeing with them. You have to analyze, synthesize, and evaluate multiple sources. So you've got to look at multiple different sources of information, synthesize them. So that should be evaluate. Synthesize them mean bring them in, and evaluate them, look at them. It's got to be planned, concise, and relevant. And that's me there. So understanding the importance of writing. So accept you need to develop a wider skill set than school or college. Learn more about writing styles in your subject area. Take responsibility for your own learning. So that means reaching out to the LDC or emailing me or learning different things or using websites. Learning about the university's library and accessing resources requires information literacy skills. You have to be quite digitally adept. So this is where, so you'll be gathering and recording information. You'll be using online sources, specialist journals, textbooks, lecture notes, and virtual learning, so VLEs. You'll also be researching. Skills required is researching, reading, and note taking. So you'll be using all these different things from all these different sources. Okay, and then there's the academic values. So there's a general way of organizing your ideas in essays, reports, and publications, and then you develop the skills to integrate ideas from literature into your writing, which is what we covered a little bit of in the previous workshop. Excuse me. You use linking words and expressions to communicate effectively with the reader. So whatever sentence you're writing, the next sentence should add on to it. It should have a meaning. So you could use things like, and I've said this to you before, demonstrates. Oops. This demonstrates that. This shows that. You know, furthermore. So when your sentence appears, it's adding on to something else, or it's adding information onto it. So that's where your linking words and things come into the fore. So you can use essential academic grammar and vocabulary and style. So that's formal and informal language. Okay, so that's not big, long, flowery sentences. That's kind of like changing your sentences, changing a sentence style, using a few short ones, a few long ones. And then another one of the workshops that are happening is sentence structure, which we also ran last term. Avoid the grammatical, vocabulary and stylistic errors common to international students. So one of those is things like here's a sentence, sitting in the middle doesn't mean anything because it's not a complete sentence. It doesn't actually, it's called a fragment, that sentence. So quite often one of the challenges or one of the errors of students is not writing full sentence. So every sentence should have a subject and a verb. So the whole sentence should actually make sense. So quite often sentences are hanging there, and there'll be further workshops in it, and they don't kind of make sense. Grammar errors can be things like tenses and missing the S on the third person singular. So they say he sit instead of he sits. And there's further, so as we go on further down the line, I'm doing also a workshop on common grammar errors, so you'll know what to do. So you need to be able to receive feedback from your lecturer and then understand what the feedback means. So as far as you know, do you understand, do you follow the feedback you receive in your reports? Put it in the chat. Do you follow the feedback? Yeah, you usually do. What, Nelson, what kind of is your feedback usually?
I think it was kind of some mistake in given the referencing and and the structure of my report maybe, but yeah, in general it was
okay. Yeah, but yes, and it takes a bit of practice as well, and you can develop it, and it will become easier. But it's just basically knowing what's expected of you. You know, that can be half the challenge. And I think we've just done this for those of you who were there. Acknowledging sources an important value in UK university studies. So knowledge is considered a commodity that belongs to the person or institution who produces it. So knowledge is owned. So it's somebody's commodity. So whoever's written that article, that research paper, or that publication, that's their knowledge. So if you're borrowing that knowledge, you need to reference it. It's kind of like a thank you. You cite sources as readers want to ensure that your information is reliable. So you have to be able to locate the information, and then by citing, show your reader that you've gone through all that research process. And then we've also done this. You must put the reference in, and then using the library website to locate sources will provide you with more information than using a regular internet search engine. And then you've got the GCU reference librarians. So basically you're using the library, you do your referencing, and you use your citations. So I remember, I think it was 2 years ago, teaching a large intake of students. It took me quite a while to explain to them why you had to reference something. And referencing, if you haven't done it before, it can actually be quite a challenging concept. To be able to, you know, the whole UK way of acknowledging sources and bringing everything up to the required level. So the quotation, moving away from referencing in a minute. So quotation, you know, paraphrasing is rewording it and summarizing it. So basically, you're just capturing the whole page and you're putting it into usually about a quarter. Okay, so these are what reports are. So there's a difference between reports and essays or assignments. So they're formally structured, they're information and fact-based, and they're written with a specific purpose and reader in mind. So then when you write each paragraph or under each heading, you need to introduce it. So you could introduce it by saying this section aims to point out, or this section reports on, or something. So don't just go straight into it. You must introduce it with your topic sentence. Okay, and your topic sentence will kind of gives you the guiding tool that guides you through the rest of it. And then the rest of it is just a development. So whatever you're doing, whether it be describing software tools or something, or discussing software tools, you must always, that's a really good thing to do, is always start off your paragraph with an introductory sentence. Just kind of like that opens out the window for what you're doing. And then you need to decide why you're writing that heading, why you're writing that paragraph. What's the point of it? So that's the specific purpose. And then your reader. And your reader, you can assume your reader is new to the subject area, so you can assume the reader doesn't really know what you're talking about. Hello, whoever's just joined. And then you write in a style appropriate to each section. So you write it in formal academic English. So no impersonal words, no I think, no reflection unless you're asked to reflect. Always use section headings. Sometimes use bullet points. However, don't make, you can use bullet points to demonstrate something, but don't have your section which is just full of bullet points. It often includes graphs or tables. So tell me this, should you reference your graphs and tables? Yep. Yep, good. Should always reference them, and people quite often forget to reference it because they take it from somewhere. So quite often you're doing a snip of it, or you're copying and pasting it, and then you kind of forget to reference it. Another good thing is, hi, Edelicio, is that right?
It's Ed.
Ed, sorry.
Hi, no, it's okay, no worries. Just one question here. If I have to reference a slide from my company that has some pictures on it, how do I do that? How do I reference this?
Okay, so I would put the name of the company under the slide and then the date. So give me an example.
Let's say, yeah. Okay, go on. Sorry.
Yeah. So I'm just saying, so that comes in, yeah, so you're using company slides. You would just say, for example, Glasgow Department of Transport, or his government Department of Transport, comma, and then the date that the slide was made, and that's all you need to do. So you wouldn't really reference the name of the person because the property belongs to the company.
Yeah, my sample is like, because I do a lot of CPDs for fire protection.
Okay.
And we have some testing pictures from testing that I put together on the slides that I present to architects, like say.
Okay.
How do I reference this? Like just put like a company property, CPD, passive fire protection.
Okay, I'm just actually on Google now, and so lecture notes, slides, and presentations.
Because it's PowerPoint presentation, so.
Okay. I think I will I'll put this up, and then have a look through it. So I'll copy and paste it and put it in the chat. Because there's so many different ways of doing it. So if you go to GCU Harvard referencing, then look up and see if it says anything about company slides, because it really depends on the type of slides that's been produced.
Okay.
Okay. So, but it would ordinarily be the company and then the date.
Okay.
But have a look at that, because it may be different variations according to whether it's a government public, whether it's a government set of slides or not.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, but the GCU reference thing is really helpful. So the reports offer recommendations for action. So that is quite a good thing to do, depending on what you're doing. If you're writing the conclusion at the end of it, so it's quite often good in the conclusion to provide a little bit of insight into the future. So things like if you're doing something about the environmental something of the city centre, somewhere, you could say this report has demonstrated that perhaps in the future more money needs to be spent on this, that, or the next thing. You know, so it's quite often, or this might offer areas for further research. So when I did my masters, that was something that I put in. I said this on the feedback and student online work. This shows that this is an area for possible research. So it's good that it shows that what you've written has got value, and it might be useful for somebody else. Essays are not structured the same. Essays are continuous. They're more argumentative and idea-based, so this probably won't be within your realm. And it's not written with a specific reader in mind, so quite a lot of the reports that you do are for a very specific genre or type of person. Essays are written in single narrative style. They don't include subheadings. They aren't bullet pointed, and they rarely contain tables of graphs, and they offer conclusions about a question. So that's the difference with essays. There's a question there, and you go and research it. And I think this is what I mentioned at the beginning. So you've got topic sentences. So when you're doing a report, when you're writing something, whatever you're writing, is divided up into paragraphs and sections. The beginning of each paragraph or the beginning of each section, which is under a heading, will have a topic sentence. So it's often quite difficult to know what to write in the sentence, what to write in that first sentence. So you need to think about what you're actually doing. So I'll ask you this question. Do you know about topic sentences? Or do you use them, or do you think, oh, I'm going to do that? Anybody, do you know about topic sentences? Put it in the chat, or Mike. Okay, yeah. I think topic sentence, so whenever you're writing, whenever you have a paragraph, whatever you're reading, yes, good. A key sentence in each paragraph, good. So whatever you're reading, whether it be a section within a report or a paragraph within a longer piece of word, the first sentence, yes, the first sentence is always sets out what the rest of the paragraph is going to be. So the first sentence is the topic, is the main idea of it. And then the secondary information, the development of it will follow. So if I look at something here, not that you can see my book, but yeah, so I'll just read what this says. This says, once you've begun, yes, it is applicable in all pieces of work, maybe not to the same degree, but it is applicable because you don't, unless you're writing a specific computer report or something, but normally you'll want to introduce your work, whether it be even a small piece of work. You'll always want to introduce it. Yeah. So, for example, this says, once you've begun to build your professional resilience, it is good to ensure that you keep developing it. So I know that the rest of that paragraph is going to be about professional resilience. So it's always good to have the main sentence, and then that helps you because then it means you're following on. Okay, so the rest of that sentence develops it. So I think, so quite a lot of the work I've kind of looked over through students, it's been the sentence, just the paragraph just starts there. However, not that you probably would do this, but you can write the topic sentence last, although that's a bit more difficult. So it's quite, you'd quite often write at the beginning. Headings and subheadings. Include headings and subheadings in your reports. So it's similar to a title. So rather than having just one piece of continuous text, you either put it in subheadings or you make sure and use lots of different paragraphs. So a paragraph isolates ideas. So a different key section of ideas is isolated by a paragraph or a section with a heading on it. So it's just like a title. So a heading is the title of a major section of the paper. For example, the section for the first section of the paper is often introduction, and then look and see what the main topic of that area, of that that paragraph is. So how many of you have done, if the majority of you are international students, I'll ask you this, how many of you have sat the IELTS exam? And if you're a UK speaker, you're as well, you haven't. How many of you have sat an IELTS exam? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Because in the IELTS exam, remember in the reading section of it, there's one of the sections, yeah, in the reading section, one of the questions quite often matching headings. Okay, so it's quite often matching the heading. Do you remember that one? Matching headings. Oh, it was probably that long ago, you've forgotten. So matching headings just means that you'll quite often go and you'll see that topic sentence is what the whole paragraph's going to be about. So it's really useful that it introduces the thing, and it makes the reader know what they can expect with it. So being objective, so your personal involvement can't overshadow what's being said. So is it good practice to say things like, in my opinion? Is it good practice to say, in my opinion? Yeah. Big no. Say again?
It depends.
Yeah, sometimes you can say, in my opinion, if you're being asked for a reflective account, or depending on what you're producing. But for the most part in academic writing, it's a no. For example, you wouldn't say, I think that Scottish people eat too many cakes, because that's only my opinion. But depending on depending on the context of what you're talking about. So you use the appropriate use of tenses, active and passive tense. So this is active, and I'm sure you know this. The dog bites the man. That is active tense. How would I turn that into passive? That's the dog bites.
The man was bitten by the dog.
Yes, the man was bitten by the dog. So that example is well old. So in academic writing, you tend to use passive tense, because it's not, don't overdo it, but you tend to use the passive tense. So you put the object first and then the subject comes after it. And then appropriate use of vocabulary. So no flowery words, no words like a lot, some, a little, good, bad. No emotive words. Use powerful specific words like a significant number of, or if you have the numbers, use that. Yeah. Personal pronouns, informal, absolute terms, always, never. Hedging language, seems that, suggests that, may be, all these kind of modal verbs. So all this will be coming in further workshops. So often I've been past work which is simply descriptive. So describing something isn't really enough. So to describe something is just basically giving it an outline. It doesn't allow you to give an interpretation of the facts. So the facts you're being presented or that you've researched, it's up to you to go and interpret them and see how those facts link in with what you're presenting. So don't simply restate facts or statements without explaining their importance and context. So if you're introducing somebody else's work, that work is being introduced for a reason. You know, it's been introduced that it might be, like I've said before, like might be supporting what you're saying, might be refuting it, might be agreeing with it, might support, might be an additional thing. So it's got to be important. Then it shows that you understand what the material means or implies. So make sure you fully understand the nature of the task. So when you're being set an assignment, make sure that you understand exactly what's been asked. So there's 3 things that you should look at: the topic, the limitation, and the command word or words. Whenever you get your question, there are 3 things to look at. One of them is the topic. What's it about? Is it about software? Is it about bridges, dams? What? Some electrical component? What's it about? What's the limitation of it? That means what's it restricted to? Is it restricted to bridges in South America? Is it restricted to software in China? What's it restricted to? What's the command word? So can anybody give me an example of a command word? What do I mean by command word? Okay. Yes, good. Describe, discuss, evaluate, all these kind of things. So the command word is your instruction. Yes, critically analyze. That puts the fear into everybody. Yeah, so critically analyze, good. So those are the command words, instruction words. So those are the ones to pay attention to. So as you're doing it, make sure you're actually answering the whole question. So when you're answering, you know exactly what you've got to answer. So you don't have to go back to it. Yes, critically discuss, which is quite. So discussing things is obviously means having an idea and developing it and having different angles. Critically is going that little one step further. So critically is kind of at the top level of thinking. So critically means, yeah, as it says, critically. So you're introducing ideas and concepts from all these different places, so they don't necessarily agree with each other. So you could have one source that might say this works perfectly well, and you have another source which says this doesn't work perfectly well. So therefore, when you're discussing it, you're showing that they're all different viewpoints, which is the beauty of what you're doing, is you're showing that everybody's got different different takes and things. Yes, avoid shallow thinking. So the big fat generalizing brush that people, that myself have done and still sometimes do, is you generalizing by saying people. Oops. Okay, I'm trying to type here. By saying people, by saying everyone, by saying all, because you can't say people, because people consists of absolutely everybody on the planet. So when you're saying people, you need to think about exactly what people. Do you think engineers, school children, professors, users of technology? What kind of people? So avoid sweeping that big general brush over everything. So try and be as specific as possible in absolutely everything that you say. So then it shows you've gone into depth. Personalizing, don't use the I's and the we's unless you're specifically asked to. Don't oversimplify. Don't say things like, don't say things like poor people in Scotland. That's oversimplifying. For a start, when you say poor, it could be poor in what? It doesn't necessarily have to be wealth. It could be poor in health. So you need to be very, very specific. And that's also too emotive, because what is poor to one person might not be poor to another person. Yes, using outdated information. So if you're doing anything to do with up-to-date technologies or anything digital, you need to make sure that it's not 20 years out of date. And don't rush to conclusions. So when you're providing something, when you're providing reasons for something or information about something, don't just say this is because. So you need to say this possibly demonstrates that. Ed, what you're saying? No, probably not. I'll tell you why. Because you're being bossy to the manufacturers. You could say manufacturers. Manufacturers maybe, or it might be relevant for manufacturers to follow, or it may be pertinent for manufacturers to follow. Yes, good. Thanks, Phyllis. Manufacturers could benefit or may benefit from, or it may be considered that manufacturers could. Because when you say all manufacturers should, yeah. Because when you say all manufacturers should, so that's a really common mistake, and that's a really good example. Because it's very tempting to say manufactured, but hedging means kind of dancing around things and making it a little bit less, a little less extreme. So so what you're doing when you're hedging is you're taking responsibility away from yourself. Because if you say manufacturers should follow, that's more or less coming from you. But as Phyllis said, manufacturers could benefit from that. That's taking you one step further. Now I hope you can see this. So plan your approach to work. Plan your approach. You know you're following academic rules and regulations and academic standards. So plan out how you're going to do it. Look at your handbook. Look at the unit paper that you're doing. Identify the reading material. So you'll have suggested reading lists at the end. So use that. Go into the GCU library, the digital library, work that out, select what papers you're going to be doing. Don't use too many. Yeah, research, obtain the material, analyze the wording of the assignment. So analyze, if it's 1,500 words, you might want 400 or 500 as the introduction, if that's the way that you're doing it, a smaller amount for the conclusion, and then, I don't know, 5 or 6 bits in between. Plan it, yeah. Set out your paper, save it under the file name and plan how you're going to do it and make little notes in each bit. Create a draft and finalize a reference list, submit the assignment and consider the feedback. Okay, so on the right hand side there of that slide, you've got all the things you can do with it within you're doing it. So you're consulting the reading list, you're accessing the materials and you're identifying what you've been asked to do. Okay, so and that's kind of where we're at. So it's basically just a slightly different mindset from what you might have been used to. So it's basically a reliance on the importance of secondary information and the importance of using good vocabulary. So use good vocabulary, use Cambridge Dictionary or whatever in order to get decent vocabulary. Making it specific, making it accurate, and laying out everything you're going to be saying. So introduce each paragraph. And then, yeah, and then your work becomes a lot easier for other people to follow.